on Jerusalem Dateline. This week on Jerusalem Dateline, a look back at the major stories of 2017 and their impact on the Middle East, from a bold announcement at the White House to the end of an Islamic caliphate that lay in ruins in northern Iraq. Plus, stories that marked milestone in Israel's history, and stories from the front lines that touched our hearts and the people who made a difference. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this special year-end edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. One of the biggest stories of the year came near the end of 2017. In early December, President Donald Trump reversed nearly 70 years of U.S. policy and recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The move electrified Jerusalem and sent shockwaves throughout the Middle East, the capitals of the world, and the United Nations. Jennifer Wishon brought us that story from the White House.
By recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moving the U.S. Embassy there, President Donald Trump has secured his place in history and demonstrated another reason why Americans elected an outsider not beholden to tradition.
We cannot solve our problems by making the same failed assumptions and repeating the same failed strategies of the past.
After decades of failed peace negotiations and a continuation of violence, President Trump says it's time to do something different.
It is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
For decades, Democrats and Republicans running for president dangled the promise of recognizing Jerusalem, only to fail to follow through once in office. President Trump delivered. He says he's just acknowledging reality, that Jerusalem has been Israel's capital for decades, and kicking off a new strategy for peace while reaffirming that the U.S. would support a two-state solution if that's what both sides agreed to.
Above all, our greatest hope is for peace, the universal yearning in every human soul.
Immediately, enthusiastic praise poured in from a diverse group of evangelical leaders. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee says President Donald Trump did what his predecessors didn't have the courage to do. In doing so, he set two great examples: how to make good on promises and how to treat your friends. Reverend Samuel Rodriguez says the historical record, empirical fact, and our faith all confirm that Jerusalem is in fact the capital of the Jewish people. I therefore enthusiastically applaud President Trump's decision. And Bishop Harry Jackson says it marks the beginning of a new season in U.S. Middle East policy. The previous administration allowed persecution, terrorism, and stereotyping of the Israeli people. President Trump called for a continuation of the status quo at Jerusalem's holy sites.
Jerusalem is today and must remain a place where Jews pray at the Western Wall, where Christians walk the stations of the cross, and where Muslims worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque.
With the president's announcement, now architects, engineers, and planners will begin building America's new embassy in Jerusalem. It will take some time to complete, but the president says he's building a magnificent tribute to peace. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
While Israelis applauded the decision, the Palestinian Authority called for 3 days of rage. But by the end of the year, at least 10 nations are considering following the lead of the U.S. and moving their embassies to Jerusalem. Other major stories this year included the Kurdish referendum in September. The Kurds voted overwhelmingly for an independent state in northern Iraq, but their dreams of freedom are still unfulfilled as they face fierce opposition from the Baghdad government, Turkey, and Iran. In another major development, Iran continued to expand its territory in Iraq and Syria, bringing it closer to creating a land bridge from Tehran all the way to the Mediterranean. Their expansion represents a growing threat to Israel. And 2017 saw the end of the Islamic State in Iraq. The jihadi army conquered large areas of northern Iraq in the summer of 2014 and declared the territory part of the Islamic Caliphate under the rule of Sharia law. The citizens of northern Iraq were subject to torture and murder, their women kidnapped and sold into sex slavery. But by late 2017, the Iraqi army and U.S. coalition forces defeated ISIS in the last major stronghold in Iraq, the city of Mosul. CBN News visited the city and witnessed firsthand the devastation left in the wake of ISIS. CBN News, escorted by Iraqi National Police, drove where the fight against ISIS was at its worst. This part of Mosul remains a military zone, littered with unexploded ordnance, IEDs, and dead bodies. We're standing in the center of Mosul, and you can really see it's an apocalyptic landscape. Everywhere you look, you can see devastation and destruction. It's a bit eerie, too. It's very quiet. It's like a ghost town. Reminds me of what a European city would have looked like in World War II after it was bombed out. And if you look around, you can tell it's not going to take months or years, maybe decades, to restore Mosul to what it once was. We stood within just a few yards of where ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declared his caliphate in the summer of 2014. Now that 3-year dream lay in ruins. His fighters dead or gone.
What we're looking at here, this devastation that we can see around us, is the price that it took to destroy that most vile of projects that was declared in this city in June 2014, calling itself the Islamic State. This is the cost, this is the price, this destruction is what it took to turn that thing from a reality back into just an idea again.
The Tigris River divides Mosul. Coalition forces bomb many of the bridges linking east and west. East Mosul still shows signs of life, but West Mosul bore the brunt of the conflict. One report says more than 9,000 civilians died in the battle to liberate Mosul from the Islamic State and left the city in ruins in the attempt to save it. We looked through this nearby church, a stark symbol of what ISIS sought to destroy. In Mosul alone, ISIS destroyed dozens of Christian churches and buildings. At one time, more than 10,000 Christian families called Mosul home. Now, just a handful remain. I'm standing at what used to be the center of St. Catherine's Church, and behind here was a convent for Dominican nuns. ISIS used this as their headquarters, and then it was destroyed by a U.S. airstrike.
After ISIS took over Mosul, they used this place as their headquarters. They brought everything they stole from the people, their cars and their property, here. They used it as a factory for weapons and bombs.
I can't express of my feelings, of my sad feelings about that, because I am comparing how it was before and now how is it, and not the buildings, but the act of the Dominican sisters.
Johanna says the Dominican sisters served as salt and light to Mosul.
You know, this convent for all Christians in Mosul has a big importance because the people of Mosul knows the Dominican sisters. They established many schools in Mosul, and all the people now who are in good position in Iraq, they are graduated from these schools, especially in Mosul. For that, the Dominican sister had good reputation in Mosul.
His humanitarian organization provided food and relief to Sunni Muslims here when the city opened up.
We were here when they bombed the minaret of Hadba. In the same day, we are distributing here foods for families. And they asked us, we threatened you, we killed Christians, and now you are helping us. We didn't understand that. Dr. John from CSI was with us. He told them that is Christianity. They love their enemies, and you are not their enemies. You are victims of ISIS as Christians. For that, we are here to help you.
While much of Mosul lies in ruins, Johanna hopes for a better future.
I hope that Mosul one day become as it was before. That is my dream.
Coming up, CBN Documentaries commemorates one of modern Israel's greatest victories, the 1967 Battle for Jerusalem. 2017, Israel celebrated a number of historic anniversaries. It marked 100 years since the Balfour Declaration, calling for a Jewish homeland. That set in motion the country's founding. A century since General Edmund Allenby captured Jerusalem and ended 400 years of Muslim Ottoman rule. And 70 years since the United Nations voted for a petition plan calling for both Jewish and Arab states. For many, the most significant milestone was the 50th anniversary of the 1967 Six-Day War, when Israeli forces unified Jerusalem. For the first time in more than 2,000 years, the Jewish people controlled the Old City and its Temple Mount. CBN Documentaries made a movie about the historic battle. And Scott Ross talked with writer-director Aaron Zimmerman of that film called In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem.
By 4:30 a.m., the Israelis had reached the Jordanians' command bunker. For the next 45 minutes, they lined the opening of the bunker with 21 pounds of TNT.
This is Ammunition Hill. This is the site of what is still today the bloodiest battle in Arab-Israeli history.
I talked with In Our Hands, the Battle for Jerusalem writer and director, CBN's Aaron Zimmerman. The docudrama tells the story of Israel's victory in the city during the 1967 Six-Day War through the eyes of the paratroopers.
Did you do reenactments here?
We did. The people who run Ammunition Hill were very great to us, and they let us have the run of the place for 2.5 nights. We had snipers shooting from the bunkers. We had them crawl through the grass, up the hill, through the barbed wire. They even showed us the original bunker. The battle kind of ended when the Israelis got to the top of the hill, and they found the Jordanian command bunker. And they took 21 pounds of TNT and blew that sucker into next week. And so they showed us that, and they said, well, you're welcome to use this bunker again to stage your explosion. And we thought, great. You know, if it survived a real explosion, it can survive a fake movie one.
Based entirely on facts, the film includes dramatizations of important scenes like Commander Motogur talking to troops on the Mount of Olives.
We are sitting on a ridge overlooking the old city, and soon we shall enter it. The old city of Jerusalem, which generations have dreamed of and longed for. We will be the first to enter.
And running through the streets of Jerusalem under threat of sniper fire to take the Temple Mount and Western Wall.
We had done another docudrama, The Hope, about the beginning of Israel, and we thought, what's the next chapter in that story? And we went to 67, and it's such a great story, and we thought, well, let's not do a dry documentary. Let's get to know some of the men who actually lived it.
And digging into all the background, historical data, etc., that must have been an enormous undertaking.
I tried to use primary sources as much as I could. I tried to use people's diaries. I tried to use minutes from Israeli government meetings. I used personal interviews. But all of the dialogue in the film was recorded in history.
As a result of the war, Israel tripled in size, beating the combined armies of Syria, Egypt, and Jordan to win the Golan Heights, the Sinai Desert, and Judea and Samaria, and reuniting beloved Jerusalem.
To cover the whole war would take too much time. So we narrowed it down to the Battle of Jerusalem, and then we narrowed it down further to one group of men, the 55th Paratrooper Brigade, and I really liked them because they weren't regular army. They were the reservists. They were a little bit older. They were the husbands and the fathers and the businessmen. And they were the guys that ended up going into Jerusalem.
We shouldn't wait for that to change. Let's go.
I asked Zimmerman what she wants the audience to take away from the film.
Well, two things. I tried hard to keep it as apolitical as possible to give it a wider audience. Number one, I want them to see the sacrifice that these men made. Number two, we went back 20 years to 1948 to what happened when the Jewish quarter fell and the Jordanians ethnically cleansed every Jew from the old city of Jerusalem. And then at the end of this segment, the Jordanian officer says, we have so completely destroyed this place that no Jew can ever return here. So then we fast forward 19 years and show how they did.
And what will Israelis think of the film?
I hope it will be good. I want people to take away a pride in their heritage.
And after all the bloodletting and everything else that's occurred here historically, there's no way that Israel, Jews are going to give up this city.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Moshe Dayan said it when he got to the Western Wall. We've come to the city never to depart from it again.
Scott Ross at Ammunition Hill in Jerusalem.
Coming up, the city of David and its prophetic history.
So you can see how prophecy is speeding up as we go.
2017 also saw a number of archaeological discoveries here in Israel. And some of the most significant are the finds in the original city of David. People visiting Jerusalem's old city may believe it's the same place King David set up his capital some 3,000 years ago, but that's not exactly the case. Today, archaeologists are uncovering that original city and telling an amazing story. So we're looking at the city of David from here.
This is the city of David.
Yeah.
So we have the palace area over there.
Anarina Heyman serves as the outreach coordinator for the city of David.
Welcome to the city of David. It's the home to the ancient biblical Jerusalem. And up till 150 years ago, everybody thought that the ancient biblical Jerusalem lies within the confines of the old city right behind you, within the walls there. So the question is, what happened 150 years ago, and where is the ancient biblical Jerusalem?
She then helped answer that question by explaining how the city of David lay hidden for nearly 2,000 years, until a British archaeologist began a discovery that continues to this day.
Chris, we're standing at a magical place right now. This is the place when Charles Warren came through the fissure that he found. He saw something, and when Charles Warren saw this, he knew that he rediscovered the ancient biblical Jerusalem. Most people thought when they came that what they saw in the old city, that was ancient biblical Jerusalem. It's only when he found this that he discovered, but wait a minute, the ancient Jerusalem lies outside of what we call today the old city.
The discovery of this tunnel system, known as Warren's Shaft, visually tells how King David captured the city and brings the Bible to life.
So it's the Bible and the excavations and the Bible coming together, giving us the full picture of ancient Jerusalem.
Further down, they found where men became kings.
Most of the kings of Israel was anointed where we're standing right now. We are standing at the place of anointing.
In fact, the city of David echoes with the people of the Bible.
David to Solomon, we get to Isaiah when he was giving his prophecies on these very walls here. Jeremiah afterwards when he had to speak about the destruction. All those things happening exactly where we're standing right now.
Archaeologists uncovered another biblical site, the Pool of Siloam, that was fed by the nearby Gihon spring. It's the place where Jesus healed the blind man, and also where the Jewish people would gather for the feasts of the Lord.
3 times a year, all the men had to come to the mikveh in the pool, and from there get ready to go to Temple Mount. And this is the walk, the final ascent that all the pilgrims can do again when they come to Jerusalem.
Heyman sees this final ascent as a merger between archaeology and prophecy.
Something amazing is happening, Chris, because we said that we are now excavating this road. And again, prophecy is being fulfilled, because it says in Isaiah, build up the road, the highway. And it says, remove the stones for my people's return.
One ongoing excavation is this tunnel leading from the Pool of Siloam to the Temple Mount. Heyman says it reveals the past and opens a door to the future. One of the City of David's most ambitious projects is this excavation called the Givati, where the entire history of Jerusalem is being revealed as if the rocks are crying out.
You can see exactly how she slowly disappeared from civilization, because one city was built upon the other. And you could see how the city could have lost hope, thinking, who's ever going to discover me again? Until God says, but in a time of favor, nothing can stop it. And that's what we see in Givati. Jerusalem is slowly being revealed.
Heyman sees prophecy unfolding.
And we're starting to see in the last decade the blueprint. She's starting to share what she looked like to us again. So you can see how prophecy is speeding up as we go. It says, Hit na'ari me'afar kumi, shake off your dust. Arise, take your rightful place, Jerusalem. If you see the excavations here on a daily basis, you can see the buckets flying. You can see the dust literally flying about, how she is shaking off her dust.
She considers her role in the City of David a privilege.
I call myself the luckiest person in the world, the luckiest girl in the world, because I have the opportunity to take what we see here and tell the people about the City of David, about the ancient Jerusalem. And every person that is passionate about Jerusalem and serious about biblical prophecy needs to know this.
Coming up, the heroes and heroines in 2017 who made a difference. In a year of violence and devastation, we met some people who showed us what love looks like. From the front lines of the war against ISIS to the depths of the Syrian civil war, these men and women risk their lives to save others. Some call it 12 seconds of love. Dave Eubank of the Free Burma Rangers ran to save a 6-year-old Iraqi girl caught in the crossfires of ISIS. This husband and father of 3 explained why he did it.
For love, I'd want someone to save my kid. And I think whenever you're terrified, you should first ask, am I supposed to do this? Ask God that, not yourself. Ask God. And if he says do it, then ask for love. Because when you're really scared, you need love. And when you have love, you'll do anything for anyone. So love is what makes you really brave. And God gave me enough of that to run across, grab the girl.
In another theater of war, trauma nurse Debbie Dennison and general surgeon Dr. Sally worked to save the lives of men and women fighting the Assad regime.
You had to count the cost. You had to say, do I love you enough that I'm willing to lay down my life? Of course. And my answer was yes.
Dr. Sally performed procedures she never faced before, like C-sections.
I have to tell you, when I delivered that first little baby, I could just feel his hands on my hands. It's what sustained us, to be able to see new life in the midst of such horrific war was just a blessing beyond belief.
And they found hope in the midst of the despair of the Middle East.
No matter what the barriers, all people respond to love. And we were, as Christians, going into a community, they didn't know us, they have a historic animosity towards Christian, but all it took was an expression of love, and we were welcomed with open arms.
Those selfless acts of love are a reminder that the gospel is being lived out here in the Middle East by many unsung heroes and heroines of the faith. And for this coming year, it's an inspiration to live more like the one who promised to never leave us nor forsake us. That's all for this edition. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. Happy New Year, and we'll see you next year on Jerusalem Dateline.